This story is generated and narrated by AI. If you notice any glitches in the voice, feel free to leave a comment. Your feedback helps improve future videos. Welcome to Whispers in the Shadows. Tonight's survival horror takes you deep into the heart of the American South, where a long-haul trucker on Highway 29 discovers a haunted broadcast, an empty road, and a hitchhiker who might not be alive. Have you ever heard of dead air that talks back? They say Highway 29 stretches too long for its own good. It runs through pine thickets and farmland, weaving behind the old gas towns that VE long since dried up. No one really knows who still lives out here anymore, but you'll still see lights sometimes, glowing like lanterns in the fog. I've been a long-haul trucker for almost 15 years. That night, I was hauling an empty load from Mobile up toward Montgomery, just deadheading it. It was a clear run, just me, the road, and too much silence. It was past midnight when I saw him, a figure standing just beyond the shoulder, under an overpass with a busted light flickering overhead. No sign, no bag, not even a damn flashlight. I slowed the rig without really thinking about it. Habit maybe, or guilt. He didn't wave, didn't even look up, just stood there, still as rust. He climbed in without a word, sat down on the worn passenger seat, placed his hands in his lap like he was praying. "Where you headed?" I asked. He just shrugged. I should have pressed him more, asked for ID. Hell, even a name, but I didn't. Something about the way he looked made me feel like I was already too late to change anything. He wore a denim jacket, torn at the collar. His boots were soaked, like he'd been walking through a swamp, and his face, there was something off about it. Not wrong exactly, just forgettable. Like the kind of face you see in a crowd and then forget 5 seconds later. We drove in silence for a while. The hum of the engine, the gentle groan of the tires, it all felt a little too quiet, like something was absorbing the sound around us. I reached for the radio, something just to break the tension, but the moment I turned the dial, the speakers coughed out a hiss of static, followed by something stranger. The voice that came through wasn't in English. It wasn't even in a language I could place. It sounded like someone speaking, backwards, syllables twisting in reverse, like a reel unwinding. I turned the knob, tried every channel, but it was all the same. Just that backwards voice, whispering out of the speakers. "You hear that?" I asked. The hitchhiker didn't look at me, but I saw a faint smile crawl across his face, like he'd been waiting for it. I switched the radio off. We passed the 70-mile mark outside of Bruton, and I noticed something else odd. The trees were thinning, not gradually like you'd expect, but suddenly, like someone had erased the forest in chunks, and the sky looked bruised. By 1:45 a.m., I figured it was time to fuel up, stretch my legs. There was an old gas station up ahead. I'd used it before, always open, just a single pump and a vending machine, run by some retired couple who barely talked. But when I pulled in, the place looked wrong. The lights were on, but too bright, flickering like hospital fluorescents. The pump display flashed numbers that didn't make sense. I stepped out of the cab. The air was still, too still. No insects, no wind, no night sounds at all. Inside, the place was empty, not just deserted, but abandoned in a way that felt staged, like someone had just stepped out for a smoke, but had never planned to come back. The hitchhiker stayed in the cab, watching me through the cracked windshield. I walked through the aisles. Nothing moved. There were no expiration dates on the cans, just blank white labels, and at the back of the store, under a flickering light, sat a vending machine, old school, with buttons you had to slam, but behind the glass, instead of candy or chips, there were photographs. I leaned in. There were a dozen, maybe more, each one faded and slightly warped from heat. But in every single one, I saw a truck. My truck. Same rust patterns, same crooked mirror, same dent on the rear panel. In one photo, the door was open, and there was someone sitting in the passenger seat. I stumbled back, nearly knocked over a rack of gum. I didn't take any of the photos, didn't even try to, just walked back out into the night and climbed back into the cab. The hitchhiker turned toward me, for the first time since we'd left the overpass. "You get what you needed?" he asked. His voice was flat, too calm. I didn't answer, just started the engine and pulled back onto the road. As we rolled back into the blackness of Highway 29, I noticed something new. My headlights weren't casting shadows anymore. They say when you drive long enough through the South, the road stops feeling like asphalt and starts to feel like memory, like you're retracing someone else's steps. I should have dropped him off, should have pulled over the moment the photos showed up, but some part of me kept pushing forward, like the decision had already been made. The highway had changed. It wasn't gradual. It was like I blinked and found myself on a different stretch of road entirely. The signs were gone. No mile markers, no speed limit signs, just blank green boards with no writing. The road itself had cracks that twisted in spirals, like someone had dragged a nail across soft pavement. I glanced at the clock. It read 2:13 a.m. I'd been driving almost an hour since the gas station, but it felt longer, like time was stretching. I looked at the hitchhiker again. He hadn't moved, but now he was holding something. It was a cassette tape, old and scratched, like it had been buried in dirt for years. No label, no markings. He looked at me and asked, calm as a corpse, "Can you play this?" I didn't want to, but my hand moved anyway. I popped the tape into the ancient deck below the dash. The speakers crackled, and for a moment I thought it was just more static, but then I heard something. Breathing, not mine, not his, but slow, labored breathing, like someone just behind the mic. Trying not to panic, then a voice, whispering in reverse again, but this time I caught a word, turn around. The hitchhiker smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry," he said. "It always says that." That's when I noticed the road sign up ahead. It was half buried in vines, rusted clean through, but I could still make out what was left of the letters. STATION, no town name, no distance, just that word, burned into metal. The air started getting heavier, like breathing through wool. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, and I realized I hadn't seen another car in over 2 hours. Not even headlights in the rear view, just black behind us, black ahead. We pulled into the next station. This one looked newer, maybe early 2000s. Fluorescent sign flickering with half the letters burned out. O-E-S-O-S, maybe it used to say one stop. But again, no people, the lights were on, the door was unlocked, but the place felt hollow, and worse than that, the same vending machine was there. Same glass front, same buttons, same photographs. But now, the truck in the photos wasn't parked, it was driving. Same model, same color, but taken from behind, on a road with no markings. In one of the photos, I was visible through the driver's side window. Mouth open, eyes wide, like I was screaming. I stepped back, heart pounding. There was a mirror behind the counter, one of those big circular security ones. I glanced up and saw 4 people in the reflection. But there were only 2 of us in the store. I spun around. Nothing, just me and the hitchhiker, standing in the candy aisle, staring at me. He walked up slow, cassette tape in one hand, the other hand, now bleeding, black and slow like syrup. "You're not supposed to stop here," he whispered. I bolted, ran straight out the door and back to the cab, fired up the engine before he was even out the store. But he didn't chase me. He just stood there, smiling again, that same tired, soulless smile. As I pulled onto the road, I looked in the side mirror. There were people now, standing in the station's doorway, tall, thin, unmoving silhouettes. They didn't wave, didn't follow, they just watched. I kept driving, didn't care about the load, didn't care about the route, just wanted off that road. But no matter how far I went, the highway never ended. The clock was stuck at 2:13 a.m. The odometer wasn't ticking, and worst of all, the radio was playing again. This time, it wasn't backwards, it was my voice screaming. I was 20 miles past the last station, or what I thought was 20 miles, but the gas gauge hadn't moved, and the road behind me was gone. I stopped checking the mirrors after a while. Every time I did, I'd catch a glimpse of something that wasn't there when I looked again. A figure on the roadside, a flash of headlights in the trees, my own face, but older, staring back with eyes that had seen too much. The cassette tape kept playing. I'd never pressed play. I'd taken it out, thrown it out the window, but the player still crackled with static. And then a new voice came through. This one wasn't mine. It was a woman's voice, calm, almost motherly. "You've been here before." I gripped the wheel tighter. The road curved sharply. I hadn't turned the wheel. My arms moved, but not of my own will, like muscle memory from a dream. The cab lights flickered, dashboard lights danced, and for a moment, I wasn't in the truck anymore. I was standing in a long hallway, walls covered in road maps. Every map had one highway marked in red, Highway 29, but the maps were wrong. Cities in the wrong places, rivers where there shouldn't be any. And every rest stop was marked with a little X. Then I was back in the truck, just like that, like waking up from a blink, but I hadn't closed my eyes. That's when I saw the next sign. A billboard on the shoulder, "Too clean to be old," white background, bold black letters, "We remember the dead." Beneath it was a row of faces, blurry, like smudged photographs left in the rain. But one face stood out, mine. Not just me now, but me in uniform. Years ago, when I served, I hadn't thought about that part of my life in a long time. Not since the accident. The cassette clicked, and a recording started. It was from the CB radio in my old rig. Back before I left the military contract job, I heard my voice, frantic, shouting coordinates, and then silence. Then another voice, a soldier's voice. "You weren't supposed to survive that." I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, tires screaming on the blacktop. I jumped out, stood in the middle of the road, breathing hard, fists clenched. The night was too still, not quiet, still, like everything was holding its breath. I turned around, and the hitchhiker was there, standing in the headlights, staring at me. He wasn't holding the tape anymore. Now he was holding a dog tag. My name was on it. The date of death was next week. He walked up to me, slow and deliberate. "You were supposed to go down with the others," he said, "but something held you back." I felt a sharp pressure behind my eyes, like a headache made of light. Suddenly, I remembered. The convoy, the explosion, the radio silence, the wandering afterward, the gas station where I blacked out, the highway that didn't match the map. None of this was real, but it wasn't a dream either. "You're in between," he said. "A leftover transmission." I stumbled back into the truck. The tape was still playing. Now it was broadcasting Mayday signals, looped cries for help, over and over, each one with a different voice. I recognized some of them, guys from my old unit, people who'd vanished on the same route, all lost. And that's when it hit me. This stretch of road, this wasn't Highway 29 anymore. It was something else. Something made of all the forgotten, the vanished, the dead who didn't know they were gone. I didn't know what would happen if I kept driving, but I was more afraid of stopping, because if I stopped, I might remember everything. So I turned the key, put the truck in gear, and watched the hitchhiker vanish in the rearview mirror, like smoke in reverse. But the voice on the tape stayed with me. "You can keep running, but the stations will always be there." I passed another sign. This one wasn't metal, wasn't even nailed down, just a piece of cardboard flapping in the wind, tied to a crooked stake. It read, "Next stop, you." I kept driving, not fast, not slow, just steady. The only rhythm that mattered now was the one coming through the tape deck. The voices had stopped pleading. Now they were just talking, like late-night radio hosts. One of them sounded like my father. He'd been dead for over 10 years. He talked about fishing trips we never took, about a house we never lived in. And then he said something that froze the blood in my spine. "You've always been here, son." I pulled over, not because I wanted to, but because the truck stopped itself. I tried to turn the key. It wouldn't budge. The headlights flickered again, and then everything died. No engine hum, no radio static, not even the sound of wind outside. I opened the door, stepped down onto gravel, only it wasn't gravel, it was ash. The road had vanished. I was parked in the middle of what looked like a burned-out field. The sky above was red, not with sunset, but with warning. Something moved at the edge of the darkness. Figures, walking, limping, crawling. Some still wore uniforms, others just shadows. All of them heading toward me. I turned around, and the truck was gone. Only the cassette deck remained, sitting in the ash, still playing. I picked it up, and for the first time, the sound stopped. No voices, just breathing. My breathing, but not from my mouth. It was like hearing a recording of yourself from a place you'd never been. The hitchhiker appeared again. He was sitting cross-legged in the ash, holding something in his lap, a map. He looked up at me, eyes black as the sky. "You're ready now," he said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the truth had finally settled in. This wasn't a highway. This was a loop, a feedback circuit, a liminal space made from broadcast signals, traumatic memory, and unfinished business. The road didn't exist on any map, but it existed in me. I had driven it 100 times in my mind, trying to reach somewhere I never could, deliver a message I never finished. Now I remembered the last job, the real one, the one before all this started. We were hauling sensitive material, no names, no destination, just orders somewhere along Highway 29. We disappeared. All of us. No search team ever found the wreckage, no black box recordings, just a ghost signal, a looping broadcast of dead air, interrupted by distress calls that weren't in any known language. And now I was one of them, not a survivor, not the last one out, just a carrier. The hitchhiker looked at me and smiled. "You can let go now," he said. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I was behind the wheel again. But it wasn't night. It wasn't even a road. Just the truck, parked in the middle of a desert. No sky, no sound, just the steady hum of an infinite signal. The CB radio lit up one last time, and for the first time, I understood the voice. Repeat transmission confirmed. Convoy remains incomplete. Message must continue. That's what I am now. Not a man, not even a ghost, just a voice in the dead air, still driving, still broadcasting, still trying to finish something that never had an ending. So if you're ever on Highway 29 and the stations go quiet and you hear a voice whispering from a cassette that shouldn't be there, don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop. If you made it to the end of this broadcast, you're one of the few who returned from Highway 29. What would you have done when the radio started speaking in reverse? Let us know in the comments. And if this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves survival horror and paranormal road stories. Until next time, keep your windows shut and never pick up a hitchhiker on a dead frequency.